Hi everybody, this is an explanation of problem 6-17. There are quite a few steps involved here, so I thought it might be useful for us to go through this together. In the shaded information here is just the information that I have been given in the problem. They manufacture two different kinds of hiking boots. One is the Extreme, one is the Pathfinder. You can see the information in terms of the sales price, direct material, direct labor. The direct labor hours per unit simply mean that for every Extreme pair of hiking boots, it takes 2 direct labor hours, as opposed to the Pathfinder hiking boot, which only takes 1 direct labor hour. So again, that information was given to me. Now, the first requirement is to compute the product margin for both products using the traditional costing system. So we were given actually an estimated dollar of total manufacturing overhead divided by the cost driver, which in this case is the total direct labor hour. So I simply took the estimate divided by the estimate to come up with 1650. This represents the manufacturing overhead that is applied per direct labor hour. Okay, so then what we're asked to do is put together the product margin. And again, remember that the 20,000 is the projected number of units for the Extreme and the 80,000 for the Pathfinder. So then we just go to town. So the $140 is what I was given in the problem. I simply take 140, multiply it times the 20,000 to get that here. And you can see that I have that formula up in the cell here. Now, the direct materials, another easy part that was given to me, $72 times the 20,000 gives me that. Direct labor, same difference. There's the direct labor hours. There is the total, which is simply 24 times $20,000. Now, here's where things get just a teeny bit tricky. So, do you remember the $16.50 per direct labor hour? Well, the Extreme boots, as you remember, take 2 direct labor hours. So you can see in my formula here that it's actually $16.50, which is this number I grabbed here, times 2, which represents the 2 direct labor hours that are required for each Extreme boot manufactured. You take that 33 times the $20,000 to get here. And then you just simply take the sales less all of these costs to come up with your margin. The Pathfinder is pretty much found the same way, only the numbers are different here. You can see down here on my manufacturing overhead, I only have $16.50 an hour, and that's because those only take 1 direct labor hour. And then I simply totaled it over here. So it's just the total here is the Pathfinder plus the Extreme equals that. I just totaled it on down here. Okay, so far so good. Now it gets a little bit tricky. So the next question says, the company is considering replacing its traditional costing system with an ABC costing system. All right, and they gave us, even though I didn't write this down, they gave us the estimated overhead divided, and then they gave us the activities. So for example, the supporting direct labor hour is I guess I did write that down, $783,600. That's the estimated manufacturing overhead. And then to get the per activity rate here is you simply take the total estimated overhead and divide that by the total, which is in this case $6.53. You can see my formula over here. It's simply B24 divided by E24, and you come up with $6.53. What does that mean? For every direct labor hour, there will be $6.53. So depending upon how many units they manufacture, that's the number here. So you can see this is very detail oriented. Okay, so then batch setup. So for every time I do a batch setup, it's actually going to cost me $1,650. If you can imagine that there's 2 different kinds of maybe machines that are used for each of the different types of boots. So every time I change that, then I've got to incur this cost here. So how did I find that $16.50? Again, I took the total estimated manufacturing overhead, divided it by the total. Bam, there you go. All right, product sustaining basically means that's the whole entire factory. That's everything I need to, manufacture hiking boots. So in this case, it was simply the estimated manufacturing overhead of 602,400 divided by 2, which was simply, I have one product called Extreme Hiking Boots, one product called Pathfinder Boots, 1 plus 1 makes 2, and you take that 602,400, divide that by 2, there it is per product. Okay, so what happens next is we simply do a very similar thing that we did under traditional costing, only now for the ABC costing. So I've got this is exactly the same information that was up here, that is what was given to us. So far, no change. There's the sales, again, it's that same $20,000. Direct material, direct labor, again, the same things. I literally copied that information down from up above, okay? And it's this whole hairy area right here of the manufacturing overhead that's different. So my supporting direct labor hours were $6.53. I color-coded this for you so you could see where I got that $6.53. I take that and multiply it times how many units we're going to produce to get the 261,200, okay? So what does that mean? Well, so what I did over here was I took the $6.53, which I had up here, I multiplied that times 2, because remember, every extreme boot takes 2 direct labor hours, and then I multiply that times the number of units that I'm going to manufacture. And that gives me the 261,200, okay? Batch setups, again, there were 200 for the Extreme and 100 for the Pathfinder. So here's my 200 and my 100, okay? That's 1,650 times 200 different batch setups gives me $330,000. And then there's just one product called Extreme, so that's simply the per product charge one time, which is the 301. And then I take my sales, I subtract all of these costs, and now look at this, the Extreme boot doesn't seem like such a good idea anymore. Okay, let's move on to the Pathfinder. Again, all this information for sales, direct material, direct labor is all from above, same thing, no different. Here I've got my $6.53 based on the direct labor hours. Since the Pathfinders only take me 1 direct labor hour, I simply take the 653 times how many I'm going to manufacture, which was 80,000, and I come up with the number here. Okay, batch setups were 100 for the Pathfinder. I kind of indicated that over here, but it's also right here. And then I multiply that times 1 and times the number of batch setups I have, and that's 1,650. Okay, so I've got my 1,650 times my 100 gives me that. Alrighty, and then my product sustaining is simply one product, 301,200 times 1 gives me that. I take my sales, I subtract all of the costs, and I come up with that. And so this is simply just a total over here. All right, and the last question asks us for a quantitative comparison of the two. So what I do here is I take my direct materials. So again, because there's not any difference in the sales part. That part is the same. We take all of the costs, right, which is direct material, direct labor, and manufacturing overhead for the traditional, which was way up here. Here's my traditional, okay? So I simply take these numbers and I plop them in down here, okay? And then I did the same for the Pathfinder. So if I came back up to the Pathfinder, here are the numbers here that I simply plopped in down here. And then I came up with the total. Now I'd also totaled it up here, but I just transferred that down over here. Then what they wanted to know really is what the percentages were of the related costs. So for example, the extremes were 1,440,000 versus the total of 5,680,000, and that meant that I have 25.4% of the direct materials for the Extreme versus 74.6 for the Pathfinder, and I do the same with direct labor and manufacturing overhead. And this only makes sense because the manufacturing overhead was that set amount of the 1650, which is why it makes sense that these are kind of flat, right? And that's how they get apportioned out. So you can see the total cost assigned to the product of the extreme is 2.5 million and some change. The Pathfinder is 6.5 million, and there are the total costs. Okay, then you come down here and you do that same calculation. So I've got, again, the direct labor is the same. I forgot. Oops, excuse me. Actually, I've got my direct materials on the correct line now. So my extreme was 1,440,000 over the total gives me 25.4%. The Pathfinder was 74.6%. So this divided by this, okay? Direct labor was the same. These are my direct costs. Again, those didn't change. I just really came up with a percentage to be able to further analyze that. Now the indirect costs, or those manufacturing overheads, those are our pesky ones, aren't they? So here I look at my supporting labor, which came from up here, right? And I just transferred it down here. Same with the batch setup and the product sustaining. And then I did the same for the Pathfinder. So you can see these numbers are represented down here, and they represent, in this case, 66.7%. Okay, so you really can start to see the difference, and it's this number right here. If you look at this manufacturing overhead, I'm going to kind of highlight this to really show you, because these actually are all of the manufacturing overhead as well, and you can really see how those are apportioned out now. So for example, you can see that the batch setups, these extremes really took a hit, which is why they look so unprofitable over here. All right, so these are the total costs assigned, which are just these manufacturing overheads that are totaled, and the same is true for the Pathfinder, and those are totaled, and then we come up with a total of the costs that are assigned using ABC costing. Now, the only cost that wasn't assigned was that $99,000, which represented that one that said other, meaning that was a organizational sustaining cost that could not be assigned to the products. So that's why we get this 99,000 here, making our total costs the same. It's just a matter of how we slice and dice that data and how we get those total costs. So really, this number can be compared to this number can be compared to this number. And what does that really tell us? Well, if you're getting into the ABC costing, it's much more specific, and you can really delineate the actual costs as it relates to producing that particular product, hence the word activity. And I hope that helps.